wanted to do a little bit more on Advent and preparing for Christmas. See, I'm pitched next to the slightly imitation robin and a few other things on the tree, but little reminders. Actually, many of them are reminders of people that we've known from different places at different times, and yeah, so people that we've got special memories with anyway. So but it looks Christmassy. Not quite the Queen's speech and her setup, but anyway, we'll have to make the best of what we've got here. A couple of things I wanted to quickly share and say on this in this little video, and they are relating to this season of Advent as we move towards Christmas, as we move towards remembering Jesus coming in person and coming to be amongst us and leading to his death and our salvation through the cross and resurrection. The first thing I wanted to mention was about dreams, and dreams are very interesting how they come into the Christmas story. The wise men have lots of documents, lots of information, guidance, prophecies of Daniel, whatever. They have lots of homework that they do before they get to pursue the star and check out with Herod and find out where's the king who's been born. And but what happens to them afterwards is interesting. That they, having been warned in a dream, it says, not to go back to Herod, they went back to their own country, a different route, and we hear that they have been supernaturally told and warned to avoid going back to Herod. Very key thing, because that just gives that window of opportunity and time for safety for Jesus and his family. And of course we hear as well in the Gospels that Herod, when he realised he'd been tricked, he ordered all the baby boys under 2 years old to be slaughtered. And so what happens, of course, is that Joseph not only has had a dream that the angel says, don't be afraid to take Mary as your wife, for what's born in her is from God, but also afterwards he's warned in a dream, get up and take the child and his mother to Egypt and stay there until I tell you. And then a later date, he has another dream, which is, and being warned in a dream, he doesn't go back to Judea, but he goes to end up in Galilee. And Jesus, of course, grows up in Nazareth. And that's quite important. I was chatting to my wife about this because it was Herod's son who then was later in charge. But it would have been very, very obvious, actually, in Judea. A boy of his age would have been absolutely unusual, because if there'd been a slaughter of all these innocents, all these toddlers, effectively, toddlers and babies, it was pretty horrific. There wouldn't have been a peer. I mean, imagine going to primary school and you're the only child in your class and only child in your year. So that would be in the kind of scenario for Jesus in that area. So it's very, very important to, it would have stood out very obviously. So dreams are very important, and my prayer really is that dreams often are a bit of a mixture of different stuff that's been going on in our head. When our thoughts getting ordered, sometimes I think, oh Lord, help me to clear out my head, because my dreams are really confusing and weird and odd, and speak to me in dreams. May God speak to us in dreams. Often in the Bible, so many times they're prophetic, they're a warning, they're divine information that we need. So I just wanted to mention that with dreams, that dreams is one thing that comes up so often. And the second thing I just wanted to mention, I'm going to do two things in one video really, but I'm hopefully not getting you bored listening to the second bit, but just fairly briefly. I'm fascinated by the genealogy. That's the list of names, ancestors in Matthew chapter 1. Of course, there's another list in Luke as well. But Matthew talks like this in Matthew 1, verse 1. It says, a record of the genealogy of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham. And then, of course, he goes through a long, long list and starts to unpack in great detail the ancestry list that connects up with Jesus. Now, there's lots of discussion around these genealogies, what they're showing, what they're explaining, what they're missing, where the gaps are, and what their purpose is. And it was very important for Jews to understand lineage. It was a lot about who they were. I watched a very interesting documentary yesterday, fascinating, about the Jews of Leeds, and a BBC presenter. He looked back at his family. He was aware that for Jewish people, having a little bit of their background, where they've come from, helps to understand their journey. And of course, his great grandparents had come from the Shtetl, from Eastern Europe, and they'd come over in the sort of late 1800s, really, a time when there was huge migration of Jewish people. There's lots of pogroms, lots of awful persecution happened, and about something like 2.5 million Jewish people actually left that region. Many of them went to America, I think, in the end, and other places. About 250,000 came to England, and actually the Aliens Act in 1905 was a kind of a piece of legislation that was a kind of a bit of a panic button about all these people coming, many of whom were quite poor peasants. Many went tailoring and so on. Anyway, so this guy in this documentary, he investigates all about his own family history and roots. And that's important for Jesus too. We're told a lot from the Gospels. We're told at the beginning, even before Matthew begins to talk about the birth of Jesus and the run-up to the birth of Jesus, the pregnancy, he talks about something way before that, which was the family history, the genealogy. And he singles out interesting things. Verse 3 of Matthew chapter 1, Judah, the father of Perez and Zerah, whose mother was Tamar. Tamar was somebody who was basically, there was an awful situation. We would call it sexual abuse, really, and certainly something pretty bad happened. Not a great person, even to mention women in the genealogy, particularly women with very questionable input into your family history, seemed to be quite a shameful thing, sort of thing that would be a skeleton in the cupboard. But they're really clearly laid out as part of it, despite even the worst of situations, even when people are badly treated, even when things get done badly. Tamar was, to many extent, a victim of stuff that happened. How she was oppressed, really, in that sense. So she gets the mention. What I found really interesting was the whole bit. Salmon was the father of Boaz, whose mother was Rahab. Verse 5. Salmon, the father of Boaz, whose mother was Rahab. Boaz, the father of Obed, whose mother was Ruth. Obed, the father of Jesse, and Jesse, the father of King David. So verses 5 to 6, telling us about Rahab, the Canaanite woman, who everybody was terrified that the Israelites were moving into the land. This woman had a sense of the fear of God, and despite being a prostitute, she really realized that the land was going to be given to these people, and she worked with them. The two spies that came through, she hid them, and she was given a promise that your house will be saved if you put the scarlet cord out of your window. She's involved in this redemptive story, and she then becomes the mother of Boaz, this woman who, despite her circumstances, despite her cultural background, gets it about faith. And this is the woman who was the mum. Boaz grew up with that story, I'm sure, in their household. amazing how God just turned her life around. Boaz becomes a man of standing, a man highly respected, clearly a man of faith. And he's the one who actually sees something of what God's doing. He perceives something that's happening with Ruth, who comes from Moab. So the Canaanites, where Rahab came from, the Moabites, where Ruth came from, these were real enemies of the Israelites. They were not people that they were supposed to be mixing with. If you had a Moabite in your family, you were excluded from the presence of God for 10 generations, it said. So Ruth comes saying to Naomi, her mother-in-law, your God will be my God, your people my people. And she comes, she supports her mum and stands by her, and then is brought into this incredible relationship where she comes and within a short space of time, not 10 generations, but much shorter, David is descended from that family line, and Jesus ultimately is as well. So bless you. I pray that God would show you too where he's got a redemptive plan, a redemptive line, a redemptive story for you, and that God will speak to you in dreams too. Those two things I wanted to share with you quickly, but I pray that that redemptive story will be the thread that runs through our life, the thread that is demonstrated comes through in the life of Jesus, even it going way, way, way back in his ancestral line. And I pray that God will speak to you in dreams and reveal himself to you in tremendous and incredibly powerful ways.